Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. I'm joined by John Helt today. How you doing, mate?
Doing great. Thank you, sir.
Good. Me and John have just been having a chat before we hit record. We've got a selection of clocks that John's grandfather used to fix. So if we've got a little bit of ticking in the background, that's what that is. We've also got a dishwasher repairman on the way. John, is that? Am I understanding that correctly? So we might get.
I'm tired of hand washing the dishes.
So this is post-COVID podcast recording, so that kind of thing is highly acceptable these days. No problem at all. And yeah, mate, I'm looking forward to this show. I don't know if I mentioned last time we spoke, John. I'm actually in Dubai at the minute, so I'm working on a East Coast time zone from Dubai. So like I'm on the phone till like 1 a.m. Monday
Oh,
to
wow.
Thursday. Yeah, and then I'm having a slightly earlier finish on a Friday. But the amount of final interviews that take place in the world of recruitment on a Friday when you've got to know people right the way through the process is unbelievable. So if your phone rings on a Friday night and you've got to know a particular guy or girl really well, you just obviously you can't ignore it. You actually want to, even just from a friend standpoint, you just want to answer anyway. Yeah, crazy hours, but I'm enjoying it. So there you go.
Excellent.
But John, for those of the listeners that don't know you, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro from your LinkedIn profile. If I get anything wrong, feel free to correct me afterwards, my friend. But started off back in the day at Hewlett Packard in the early 90s as a systems engineer. You were there for almost a decade, about 8.5 years. You then progressed on to Scribs Network Interactive Inc. You were also a system engineer there for over a decade, so some really good foundational experience there. You then progressed on to Discovery Inc. You were there for 20 years, progressed really nicely through that organization, starting off as a security architect and engineer. You then progressed up to global security operations center manager. And then you progressed again to be global director of information security operations. You are currently involved with the University of Phoenix, which will be great to get stuck into. I'm always interested to hear how people learn and optimizing career progression within security. And currently you are at Accenture Federal Services. You started off as a security delivery senior manager, and you've recently progressed onto a BCISO role, and your title there is Senior Information Systems Engineer. So, John, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. And you did a wonderful job of that. It's been quite a career, and I'm always excited about what the future holds.
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to getting into it, man. I'm looking forward to we're going to talk about a few things, but it'd be nice just to unpack that journey because reading that intro back, you've had to really, I'm sure there's been some ups and downs along the way, but reading it, it almost looks like a textbook, like real nice kind of progression journey, the way up to senior levels, management levels, director levels, and you've come in it and got that kind of nice foundational knowledge before you've come into security. So there'll be a lot of people listening that want to replicate that kind of journey and that kind of path and level of success. So it'd be nice to unpack that. And I know you do public speaking, I know you do education, so there's a lot to chat about. But I'll start where I always start, John. What's a day in the life like for you? What do you get up to? And yeah, what's going down at the minute, mate?
You talked about challenges, and you talked about getting from one to another. And I have to say, the best way to do that is with a plan. And I tell folks from my mistakes, I did well, and I was fortunate, and I've been blessed. And you saw 20 years at that Scripps Networks, which turned into Discovery and that. But a lot of that was without a plan. It was riding the wave. I'd invested in myself. I'd invested in my learning, and I liked to learn new things, but I didn't really have a plan. And like when they came to me one day, a lot of the things I was doing were security related. And they came to me and said, "We're going to move you into the security department." I was like, "Oh, okay." I was focused on caring for my family, and the job was a job. And I didn't really make a plan for the career progression. When Discovery came and bought Scripps Networks, and they said to me, I'll back up a little bit. In my discussions with my CISO at Scripps Networks over the years, he said, "You've got good skills with people. You've got good skills interacting. You understand the business. We really need to move you into a management role. Let's get a plan for that." And I was like, okay, that sounds scary. Leading people, that maybe let's talk about that. And then Discovery bought Scripps Networks. And that opportunity was gone, I thought. And then mergers and acquisitions are all about doing more with less, figuring out how you can take the two companies, turn them into one company with spending less money than the two companies did independently. And so when they came to me and they said, John, looks like you've done a great job as a senior security architect, and we've already got a bunch of security architects. We don't need you. Stay till the end of the year and you'll get your severance. But we suggest you start looking now, and good luck to you. And that was one of those rough spots. Like, I came home and I was like, what now? Because I didn't have a plan. I wasn't planning like I should have. And I was fortunate again, because mergers and acquisitions are unstable, and you have a lot of people that are leaving the company and a lot of people that are coming in, and their manager of their security operations center left. And I said, this is an opportunity. This is the kick in the butt I needed to actually force myself to move forward and progress. And so I interviewed for the role, and I got it. And I started to lead the internal SOC and managed services and things that are spread around the world, and was able to quickly progress from that into the global director of security operations, because I did a really good job at it. Again, I didn't plan beyond that. And things change, life changes, and the industry changes. We'll talk later about breaking into security. It's hard because a lot of companies aren't doing entry-level security in their companies anymore. They're depending on managed services. Even large companies like Discovery are depending on managed services. And so there came a time when it became obvious that the thing we needed to do as a company was leverage more managed services and less in-house security operations. And so I got to guide my people through that transition and help guide them into their next roles, and then find my own next role as a result of that. And it was, again, a rough time, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And I started looking for different opportunities, and I started to expand my wheelhouse. And it was great that I was able to get on with Accenture Federal Services and work in their managed services organization, where I was helping to lead the product development that we were using to make managed services really successful. And about a year and a half ago, as I was working on annual priorities, I said, all right, John, you're getting to be an old man. I'm not too old. What do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do with your life? You're setting goals. You're setting SMART goals, not only for the things that you want to do here, but think long-term, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. What do you want to do? And I thought, you know what? I've learned a lot from the CISOs that influenced my life, and I've had some really good influence, and I'd like to be able to influence companies and people that same way. So where in my portfolio of skills am I weakest to progress beyond security operations into that general? I've started to get some development, and I've started to get some other things, but what do I need to do to have the well-rounded skill set to be a security leader that can talk to the business and talk to the board, as opposed to just talking to a small section of security? And I saw that risk and compliance, governance were the areas where I really did not have a lot of experience. And so I put down in my priorities for the year that I wanted to make efforts to learn governance, risk, and compliance, and find opportunities to participate in that. Shortly thereafter, my part of the organization was having to become compliant with certain 800, 171 controls, some of the NIST controls. And that got on me. And I was like, be careful what you ask for. And then it was challenging, and it was fun. And then it wasn't too long after that, just this past July, when an opportunity within the office of the CISO opened up to be able to go in then and help other parts of the business do that same compliance journey that I went on, and help them understand the importance of it, help them understand what's necessary to meet certain controls, and really just be that guide to provide technical expertise as well as that interpersonal expertise to be their advocate for security and be security's advocate for them. So I'm really loving that right now, and it's loads of fun.
Yeah, no, cool, John. Thanks, mate. There's a lot to dive into there. And yeah, getting good at NIST 800, 171, and then CMMC coming around the corner. There's no prizes for guessing who was the CMMC go-to guy when that started to pick up then, if you were fairly well versed in 171.
Indeed. And CMMC has just released some new changes that are going to affect people pretty significantly.
Yeah, no, I think CMMC is at a really interesting life cycle at the minute. And I think I said to you before, John, even the people that were most skeptical about whether it was going to come to fruition or not, I think even they are finally believing that it's definitely here and it's here to stay. But John, there's a few bits to unpack. A couple of things, like you mentioned about pulled you to one side and said you've got great people skills, great communication skills, interpersonal skills. And I talk about it a lot on the podcast, but I just think it's so important these days. You also mentioned riding the wave. I think there was like a wave tech for certainly for the last kind of 8 years going back, maybe even longer. There was a wave it was just like tech was hot for ages. And then obviously 2021, COVID temporarily dipped and then it boomed again straight after COVID. Then we've been in this kind of dip 2023, 2020. So it's starting to normalize and come back now. But I think just recently is probably the first time that it's been tough out there. And yeah, when you talk about having a plan and putting stuff in place, this kind of stuff can be really beneficial for the listeners. If I'm listening, John, and I'm thinking, so I love what you say about a plan. If I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, great, I need a plan. Can you give me some direction on that? I really like the way that you've gone with compliance as well, because it's massively valuable. I know from the clients we deal with, it's a hot subsection of security when other subsections aren't quite so hot. I know it's an area that's going to get more and more valuable and bigger as time goes on. I think it's the way that not just the US government, like governments around the world are going with compliance. So if I'm listening and I'm thinking, sounds great, John, but how do I implement a plan? What would be a good plan? What's a good area to focus on? Where should I start? Any advice there, mate?
Sure, absolutely. Start by being curious. Start by asking questions. Start by asking yourself questions. What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? Does filling out spreadsheets and paperwork just make your day? Does seeing how things work make your day? Now, I'm going to pause there because it's important to understand how things work. That be curious. You've got to be curious. You've got to be adventurous and learn how things work. There are so many opportunities now that there weren't even a decade ago to get free training and free hands-on experience, be able to set up virtual things on your computer or cloud things that you can have available. Even now, right now, there's things you can do with the Holiday Hack Challenge. I'm going to put a plug out there for the SANS Holiday Hack Challenge. They opened early this year. They opened last year, where you can get in free of charge and get hands-on experience with a lot of technology and solving problems. So many people that want to break into tech haven't had the chance to get that hands-on. That I've taken college courses. I've got a degree. Great. Do you understand networking? Not really. I haven't played with it. Take the opportunities to play with things. Even if you're wanting to get into more of the risk or compliance side, the governance side, being able to have at least an understanding of what your parts of the business that you're working with are going through will make you a better security professional. Play with what you can, be adventurous. And that the other part of that is it lets you then demonstrate your skills. Most employers are looking for experienced security professionals, then for entry-level security professionals right now. Managed service providers are scooping up the entry-level people and putting together a mill where they can bring on people at a fairly low salary compared to what the rest of the InfoSec landscape is making, but they're also investing in them and developing their skills. So that may be an opportunity as well. But if you can demonstrate your skills and quote unquote experience by what you've done, I participated in the Holiday Hack Challenge 2024, and you can go see all the things that I did in my GitHub repo over here. So that you have some things that publicly show that you're not just reading books, you're not just taking classes, but you're doing things actively that show you understand the business, you understand the technology. Those will really help you advance.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. It's so true. And if you document and demonstrate, we'll use the Holiday Hack as a great example and a very relevant and timely one. But yeah, if you do that, it's helping yourself. Then you document it so it reinforces your knowledge. Not only do you document it, you post about it on LinkedIn so it's helping other people. Then it's building your own personal brand. Then your LinkedIn profile becomes like a 3D version of your resume. And then all of a sudden, you're head and shoulders above anyone else who's breaking into the market. And I think really it's so true what you said. People are looking for that top 2, 3, maybe max 5%. But if you do everything you've just said and I've just said there, most people won't do that. Even a lot of people listening to this will probably listen and probably go, oh, that sounds like a good idea, but they won't actually execute on it. So if you just do these things and go a little bit above and beyond, I think straight away it puts you in the top few percent of people, because most people just don't for whatever reason, do they?
Yeah, it does. And when you're documenting, it gives you a chance to learn to write and learn to communicate. And we mentioned University of Phoenix, and I've been teaching there since 2008. And I'm amazed at how many college students really struggle with written communications. I have to give thanks to my high school English teacher, Mrs. Hicks, she was the strictest English teacher. It was a small school, so we had her for all 4 years of high school. And she was very strict, and she taught us right. So that when I went into college, I was able to test out of most of my English classes. But it was only because of that investment at an early age, learning to write, learning to effectively communicate, and then doing it. The only way you get good at those things is to do them. And I get college students that come to me and they're like, everything in this report I gave you was technically accurate. And I'm like, yes, but you didn't communicate it. We have to work on that. If you do a pen test, if you go into an organization and you break all the things, and at the end of it, you can say, I owned you. I broke all the things. I'm domain admin, and you can't effectively communicate how you did it. And in language that the business can understand the things they need to do to secure their environment, then you just hack them. You didn't provide them any value at all other than being hacked. Somebody else would have done that free of charge.
Yeah, exactly, John. And it definitely being able to articulate yourself in a written format or a verbal format. And I see it so much because I use compliance as an example. Like when we're working a compliance search, which we are doing at the minute, we have a phase where we map the market out initially and we do a lot of heavy screening to really try and effectively just get to a point where we can actually section off maybe a group of 30, 40 people with a view of building a shortlist of maybe 3, 4, 5 candidates at any given client that's engaged us. But there is so many people out there that do fall short on these things. And yeah, I think it's just being aware and upskilling and just going back to having a plan. I love the way that you've drilled down to it and gone, I'm going to do this for compliance. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I think it's such a good way to progress within security. Like I say, I think it's a value-adding subsection of security. I see so many people, John, as well, that come in, and I don't mean to moan at anyone. I'm trying to help when I say this, but I see so many people that are brand new in security, and I ask them what they want to do, and they go, I want to be a red teamer. If you want to go from brand new to red teamer, like that is so hard. There's so many steps between brand new and red teamer that it's unbelievable. So it's, let's say, have an actual like commercially aware plan of what's actually going to enable you to move forward and add value to various different organizations within InfoSec. And it seems like you've really stepped back and really thought that through, mate.
If you want to be effective on the red team, you have to have experience on the blue team. You have to know what they're going through, the challenges that they have, so that when you communicate, again, when you're in a red team, you're usually inside the organization. You're part of the same thing. You're working towards the same goals, and you have to keep that in mind and be able to communicate. Here's how I did what I did, and here's how you could have detected me, or here's how we together can help to refine some of the controls. That's where we get into some of the purple teaming, where you can have the two organizations, the offensive and the defensive part, work together to that business goal of increasing the company's resilience to an attack.
Johnny, when your colleague pulled you aside all them years ago and said your people skills are really good, your communication is really good, why was it good? What were you doing that others weren't, that could help the listeners now?
I think it was just experience. So when I first hired on at Hewlett Packard, my manager there, the title was customer engineer. That was what they actually gave you. We were doing systems engineering, but Hewlett Packard said, your goal is to make sure the customers are happy. And the first thing that my manager did with all new hires, no matter whether it was they were green out of college or whether they were experienced, is he sent them to a Dale Carnegie course.
Oh,
He said,
wow.
you need to learn some of these skills. And if you can read anything by Dale Carnegie, if you can observe any of those courses, I strongly encourage you to do it. Some of the actual courses are expensive, but they're worth it. And insider baseball, if you take one of the classes, you can later come back as a graduate assistant and help other people through the classes and glean the material again and again.
Okay.
It's very valuable there. But that was one of the things that helped me early on in my career. And I did go back. I'd go back every few years and say, I want to sit through this. I'm going to help people. And so that was valuable. But learn to communicate, learn to empathize, put yourself in the shoes of the parts of the business that you're working with. Sometimes I've done that well. Other times I may not have done that as well. And so learning from your mistakes and just communicate. You can't communicate too much, but communicate concisely. That's the effective thing. Communicate all the time and communicate concisely. I think, was it Mark Twain? He said, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. It's hard to effectively communicate in a concise manner that people can see these are the things that I need, and do it with empathy and kindness.
Yeah, no, it's so true, John. And it's that communication piece. I think like years and years ago, like when there wasn't many hackers around, or there maybe was, but no one knew who they were, and it was like this real cloak and dagger type thing, and the industry was just. But you probably could get away maybe more with the communication not being as refined as it is today. But I think as time goes on and on, like I've even got clients at the minute that they want people to have done public speaking as part of the job specification, and it's genuinely, it's Tom, if they haven't been public speaking, don't send them over. I don't care if they're good. And that's not just one or two companies that I'm dealing with, that's quite a few. So like we're seeing this more and more, so it's important for moving you forward in terms of progression, but I just think it's just becoming ever more so as time goes on.
And that's challenging for a lot of people, especially when they're fairly new in the industry, to be able to say, what I'm going to get up in front of people, especially my peers. I'm going to get up in front of my peers that have the skills and have the experience, and I'm going to try to explain something. I'm going to look like a fool. And I encourage people, reach out to your local B-sides, reach out to maybe your local ISC2 chapters or other local, maybe your local DEF CON security groups. They're always looking for people to speak, people to share. B-sides is a great way to become involved and become a speaker. They take a lot of people that are early in their careers. That's where I started a lot of my public speaking for InfoSec, was in B-sides. And I will tell you, my first B-sides Knoxville talk was not the greatest. If you want to Google it, The Art and Science of Herding Cats, How to Get Users to Stop Clicking Things. It was not good, but I learned and I grew, and it's a great opportunity. And if you get an opportunity to volunteer with your local B-sides too, I encourage folks to try to do that. I've been an organizer for B-sides Knoxville for a few years now, and it's loads of fun. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. Cool. And it's loads of fun.
Yeah, cool. I think that's the thing with speaking. You've got to start somewhere, and let's say you've got to go out there and probably not be the best. It's the only way you're going to get good at everything. The first time you ever did any compliance related work, John, or the first time you do anything in your career, you're probably not the best at it, but you've just got to push and do it. I know, and he won't mind me saying, and I've mentioned it before, but Tim from the founder of Red Siege, he said he went up on stage for his first public speaking event. I think it was meant to be like a 20-30 minute slot he had. He said he was finished within 3 minutes. He just read everything out so fast because he was so nervous. Tim's a phenomenal speaker now. He's always online. He's doing this, that, and the other. You'd never know, but it just shows you, like, very rarely is someone absolutely phenomenal at public speaking on the first go. They've probably had some training. They've probably made a fool out of themselves once or twice and then got good.
Exactly. And how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice, and you just have to do it.
Cool. I know you've mentioned a bit on the communication. You talked about, so you got to a bit of a crossroads. There was like merger, acquisition, various different transactions going on, a bit of instability, and you got given some bad news. And that was when you made a plan. How did you handle that, though? Is there any tips that you've got for when things do go wrong, or when you're struggling, or when you're not progressing at the rate that you want to progress within security? Have you got any go-to that you adopt that could help me and help others listening?
In information security, a lot of us tend to be do-it-yourselfers. Those of us that have been good at it, we've learned to do things ourselves. And I like to be able to be in charge and do things. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I had plumbing problems after plumbing problem after problem. And I figured out that I could replumb my house with PEX and do it myself. And it's cool. But when you get into some situations like this, you realize that you can't do it yourself. You have to be in community. You have to have other people that you can depend on who can independently look at you and look at your career and have those hard decisions and say, you know what, John, you don't do this or this well. You could improve in these areas, and then respect that. And I can't believe you would tell me that I'm not good. Find those people that can speak to your heart and that can speak to you honestly, and that you can speak to them honestly too, and have those conversations and build each other up. That you've heard the term iron sharpens iron. That's not pleasant. It makes screeching sounds and it leaves little bits of stuff around. But at the end of the day, you end up better for it. So have that community, build those people, reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out to people locally. Again, I'll talk about DC86 or DC groups. In our area, it's DC865, but B-sides groups, other local, even local maker spaces, so that where you can find people that are wanting to do things that are similar to what you're doing. Reach out, build that community. I hear the term all the time, find a mentor or be a mentor. That's a little bit more challenging. That's more than just the community. That's finding somebody who is willing to invest in you. And if you do that road, be ready to do the work, because a good mentor is not just going to listen and give you touchy-feely. A good mentor is going to say, this is broken. I think you need to do this and this to fix it. And then you better be ready to do the work, because if you're not, that mentor is investing themselves in you. And if you're not ready to do the work, there's no point in it. And they will likely move on to somebody else.
Yeah. I think that hard work piece, it just gets you everywhere, John. I think, like, if I see anyone on the team, even if they're making mistakes, not that I want people on the team to make mistakes, but if someone's, coming in a little bit early, starting late, and this might sound a bit old fashioned of me, but if someone comes in and grinds and shows willingness, for me, I'll just give them all the time in the world and I'll help them out.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to put in the effort. And I have students all the time that say, I want to get into InfoSec. Great. Why? Because it pays good. Okay. Do you like any of the aspects of it? I don't know. What effort have you put into doing things that are related to the topic? I don't know. Right now I'm playing video games. I'm like, okay, shift that direction, and then you might start to be successful. Even the people that you mentioned earlier, the people that I want to be a pen tester. Why? Because they're cool. They're the ones that get all the glory. And they don't talk to the pen testers that I've talked to who are 5 years into their career, and they're like, I just can't do this anymore. It's no fun. I go into every company and I do the same things, and I get in and I write the same report. Goodness, I could change the names and just put it in there and it'll all be the same because people aren't making the changes. I'm tired of it. I'm burned out. I want to move on. They don't see that side of the industry.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you're right. There's like boring, repetitive parts to every job. And I think you can look at a hacker on social media, or you can look at loads of different jobs, but there is some parts where you've just got to grin and bear it, be consistent, keep going and leverage the compound effects. And that's how to be successful, but it's probably not always talked about on social media and online and stuff like that. I love what you say about the community as well. I did it recently with a recruiting course, John, like I paid to join this community, and they strip your whole agency to bits, and you have to really do leave your ego at the door, because it's what you're doing this wrong. And I didn't do it for a long time because I think it was almost like a bit of an insecurity, bit of an ego thing. I was like, I don't need any help. I've been recruiting for years now. I do think dropping that ego and realizing no matter what level you're at, whether you're breaking in mid or senior, even if you're doing well, complacency kills. So I think joining that community, getting an outside perspective, whatever you're doing, from my own experience, I can really vouch for you on that one as well and agree with you. It makes a big difference to your happiness levels, mate, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And especially if you're teetering on the edge of burnout, or that, having that group of people that can empathize with where you are, that you can just go and vent. Let's get together for lunch because I really just need to vent. Okay. In fact,
Mm.
I still get together for breakfast or lunch sometimes with folks that I worked at in previous gigs, just to stay in touch, just to learn what they're doing and to share what I'm doing. Just it helps.
Mm. Yeah, no, it does. It does, mate. Definitely. We can't probably do an episode without talking about it. So I'm just gonna get the conversation onto AI and where it's going. And I did something on LinkedIn about some juniors not being replaced with certain clients I've dealt with, and someone was like, "I don't believe you that it's taking jobs." I know categorically it is taking jobs at the junior end, which maybe not everyone wants to hear. I think there's ways to combat it, but yeah, what's your thoughts on AI, John? Where it's going? What should the listeners know? How will it affect people? What do you think?
I'll go back to what I said earlier about being curious and being adventurous and demonstrating your skills. Play with it. There are a lot of free tools out there that you can start to learn from. It's not all generative AI. Generative AI is what's really getting the headlines now. But learn about it, play with it, start to get experienced with it. You talked about AI not necessarily replacing jobs, and I think that's right. But your role might be replaced by someone else who understands AI.
Mm.
And so to be able to get involved and learn, and I've dabbled in it a little bit. Last year, I was like, all right, what can I do to play with AI? And we were working on a challenge for B-Sides Knoxville. And I said, all right, what if I developed this little story for the challenge that is about an AI? And I use an AI to generate it. So I got to really dig into, I started with Bard and then it switched to Gemini to be able to just start to learn, how does it work? How does it respond to certain prompts? Am I an AI expert? No. I learned a few things. I learned what I think is one of the most important AI things that I've heard somebody else talk about recently as well. And that's never ask AI a question to which you don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Because then you don't know whether it's getting it right or wrong. And once you can start to really learn it, then you can start to look for ways to use it to enhance what you're doing. I will say, don't depend on AI to write your papers for you. For any
Definitely.
of my potential students that are out there, don't use AI to write your papers for you. We can recognize it.
Mm.
And that same thing where you're not asking AI a question you don't know the answer to. You may not necessarily see the things that it just makes up that are there. Now, can you use AI to help refine what you've written so that it communicates better? Yes. And then proofread it and then hand it to somebody else to proofread, because there will be some little things in there that are just like what they don't effectively communicate.
And proofreading's a massive thing. Like I've seen all sorts go wrong in hiring processes over the years, as I'm sure you can imagine, with people not proofreading stuff. And yeah, on the AI front, yeah, don't use it if you're one of John's students, but don't use it in the hiring process as well. We've had a few, I won't mention any names or company names or candidates, but we've seen it all lately with people just doing stuff that shouldn't be doing. And you can spot it a mile off. You've been around for a while, John. I've been recruiting for a while, so I can spot various things as well. And it's, the times to use it, and there's a balance to be had for it. Would be crazy to ignore it, but at the same time would be crazy to, like you said, ask it questions that we don't know the answers to and totally rely on it. So there's definitely a balance to be had there. But there is some really good stuff. Like in recruitment to lead gen companies, what we used to do is you'd look at every candidate you spoke to for the last 6 months and you'd get their resumes, John, and you'd look at every company that they've worked for. And that would be how you did your lead gen. You'd find the companies that every GRC analyst or pen tester or security engineers work for. And it used to take ages to map out a market. You'd have to do it all the time. New companies popping up. Well, we've got this AI tool now that just bang, it just does it in a few, and it's wow. Like so, there are some really good benefits, and we can just like ping it across every state now and look at new startups and the size and the types of people they're employing, and it's great for us targeting new customers. So there's definitely some huge benefits for it. And you mentioned about mergers and acquisitions doing more with less, and I think AI really do that in the security space and in the recruitment space, and it's a really exciting time. But you've got to stay switched on and sharp with it, haven't you?
Absolutely. And for those entry level security roles, for a lot of people that are wanting to get started, they're starting on SOC or help desk or things like that. AIs are starting to really be helpful there, but they're also changing the landscape of that job. So it used to be that entry level analyst would get an alert, and then he would be going and manually looking in this tool to get information and looking in the other tool to get information and starting to correlate that information and put it together and understand it, and then be able to escalate that to the next level. AI is doing a lot of that for you. You can very easily tie a bunch of tools together and say, all right, based on these, integrate this information, summarize it, and then even make a decision, thumbs up or thumbs down on whether it should be escalated or not. So those entry level analysts are able to be much more effective. They're able to process many more alerts and send those up the chain, but they're also not having to implement those analytical skills to do that, so that as they start to grow and as they start to look and say, all right, can I be the tier 2 analyst? Can I be the senior analyst? Those people have to really analytically go back through that information and say, all right, is this really valid? Is this not? Why? How do things work? How do things go together? And if they're not gaining those skills early on, it's going to make that progression a lot more challenging for them.
Yeah. So basically, if I'm coming in to security with AI being so prevalent, I'm not necessarily understanding the inner workings or the fundamentals at the early stages unless I very intentionally do. And if I don't, it's going to hinder me later down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, yeah, that's really worth knowing, because I bet as a junior coming in, you could easily skip on. And what you think as you get to tier 2 and even tier 3, it will just come to absolutely bite you later down the line. You'll just miss stuff.
Yeah, if you don't understand why things work. What was it? It was in Star Trek, one of the Star Trek movies, where Montgomery Scott says, you have to understand why things work on a starship, how things work on a starship. You've got to understand how the pieces come together, why they do what they do, so that you can make better decisions and communicate more effectively.
It goes back to what you said at the start about being curious. Reverse engineer every process, every tool, like really understand what's going on. And it is interesting. It's nice to find out how things work and what's going on. And it definitely makes you better at what you do, 100%.
Indeed.
So yeah, cool. I always like to talk about books or podcasts or content you're consuming. I know you've mentioned Dale Carnegie. I'm sure his talks are good. I've read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've probably read that book about, you'll be pleased to hear, about 6, 7, 8 times. It's an absolute cracker. I've got all my pages highlighted now, so I can literally read the bits that are most important to me in about 20 minutes. I can do like a skim read of the book whenever I need a refresher. So I know that's an absolute cracker. But is there any content you're consuming online? It can be technical, non-technical. It can be security related or not. Just any books or content that you would recommend for people listening that could be most helpful, mate?
Sure. Yeah. For books, there's a book I reread once a year, every year, just because it helps. It's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It talks about how we mentally perceive information and how we make decisions, and it forces you to deliberately think about the way you think. So Thinking Fast and Slow is one I recommend to everybody. Atomic Habits is another one that I recommend to everybody, to really force you to evaluate what you do, how you do it, and how you can improve yourself. Podcasts. I was doing CPEs the other day, and I put together an audit for a month of all of the information security podcasts I listened to. And I found that over a month, I listened to more than 50 hours of information security.
Wow.
There's a lot of them out there. But if you're looking for stuff on the daily to really just to stay current with what's going on, I like the CISO series, Cybersecurity Headlines, the SANS Internet Stormcasts. They do a daily, it's a short daily podcast first thing in the morning. They can tell you what's in the headlines, what's going on, and the Cyberwire, so that you can speak eloquently, so that when that senior security person meets you in the elevator and says, hey, I just heard about this thing on the news, you can say, yeah, and here's what it was, because you're getting that daily dose of things that are changing. For general InfoSec, I like the CISO series in general, the Cyber Ranch podcast. The Enterprise Security Weekly is another good one if you're wondering how the different pieces fit together in the security industry and in enterprises. And technical podcasts, I always fall back to one I've listened to for decades. They just hit or are just hitting their 1000th episode, and that's Steve Gibson's Security Now.
Okay.
Really good technical deep dives into a lot of topics. Great podcast.
Cool. Yeah, there's some really good ones there. I really like that. Is it Cyberwire, the one that you said that gives you all the latest information? Cyberwire, yeah?
Cyberware. Yeah, it'll give you some
Cyberwire.
in the afternoons. It drops around 4:30, 5 o'clock
Okay, cool.
Eastern time every day. And then the cybersecurity headlines by CISO series drops early in the morning.
Yeah. See, I think that sort of thing's so good because whether it's a job interview or whether it's a client meeting, and just rather than doing the kind of typical small talk about, I don't know, the weather or something like that, if you can just drop in something like that, I think in terms of building rapport and spreading the word, I think, yeah, I can see why that could be. I bet it's interesting to listen to as well. I might have a little listen myself.
And it can help you in your roles when you are getting little tidbits of things that are active in the industry, and you can forward those up to your leadership. Now you're starting to do threat intelligence. This could be an issue to our type of industry, and you're letting management know that you're staying abreast of those things. Years ago, there was this thing that was happening with a security company, and Mandiant was saying the news was out there that Mandiant had been compromised, and started to dig into it and started to listen. And then they did a news release on a Sunday evening, like a live listen to us talk about it. And only because I was ear to the ground, I was able to find out about that. And that's when we found out that the Mandiant said, you know what? We weren't really, our infrastructure was affected, but it wasn't us. It was this other company called SolarWinds.
Oh, right.
And only because I was staying abreast of it was I able to, on a Sunday night, reach out to the chief information security officer and say, this is a big deal. This is a big deal because of this and this. And we were able to get ahead of things only because people were paying attention to what was going on.
Yeah, good, mate. It's good to have your finger on the pulse. And yeah, I think from just a stimulation level, it's really good fun, and it helps your career and helps others around you in massive ways. And I always think, what better way to learn and progress than to actually analyze and reverse engineer real life attack paths. I think it's probably some of the best research you can do, and fascinating as well.
And you can play with some of that in freely available tools all the time. Try Hack Me is a great resource there, where you can go online and you can simulate red team stuff. You can simulate blue team stuff. They'll give you certain challenges. If you're new and you don't even know where to start, many of the challenges have solutions that are already out there on YouTube. So you can have somebody walk you through the challenge and then do the next one and try your best and then go back and walk through it. There's a free tier and then there's a paid tier. So people, may not necessarily have the resources to invest in something, can get started for free, learning hands-on, and then document it.
Yeah, there's so many great. I almost wonder, like, these days, I think I said this on another episode, but like years ago, like, education was saved for like the very rich and privileged within society. But if we go back a long time, and now it's like with the internet, everything's like ultra accessible. And when you talk about stuff there with Try Hack Me and what you can do, and I think about it in recruitment terms as well. I can click a few buttons on my phone when we get off this show, John, and I can listen to the best recruiters out there in different spaces and what they're doing and how they're doing it and how they attract better clients and how they attract better candidates and how they keep the customer. And it's all just literally on that device. And when you actually stop and think about it, whether it's Try Hack Me or a recruitment podcast or whatever it is, that is actually like unbelievable, like unbelievably amazing. Like, we can be anywhere in the world and just access the best of the best information. I just wonder if sometimes it's almost too easy that if it was like still a fortune to buy, or there was a paywall behind, not that I want there to be, but if there was a paywall behind it or something like that, we'd probably almost like want it more. It's almost gotten too easy in some respects, but it's great. But we should all keep in mind that like we need to be taking advantage of it because it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, oftentimes people don't value what has not cost them anything. It's just, it's a psychological thing. But yeah, you're spot on.
On your progression through your career, I know you got to that pivotal moment where the security was implemented within your organization, and that kind of, you said, I think, jolted you into action or gave you like a kick in the right direction at the right time. Is there anything else? Like, your progression's been really nice. Is there anything else that you've done that's enabled you to progress to leadership roles, director roles? Like, why have you done it where others haven't? I know you've mentioned communication. Is there anything else you can give us that's enabled you to progress up the ranks?
Try. It's so easy to say, I'm not good with people, or I don't want to lead people, or I don't have enough skills. Get yourself out there and try. Look at what roles are available. Interview for roles, even roles you don't necessarily want. Apply, interview, just so that you can build those skills and figure it out and start to get feedback from those people. And what would I need to do to get this role? And then do it. It's just going to take the work and the effort.
It is. I really like what you just said there as well about be careful how you self-identify, essentially. If you say, I'm not very good with people, or if you keep telling yourself that often enough, you'll start to believe it, and it'll subconsciously go into your mind, and it'll end up becoming a reality. So yeah, I think be really careful what you tell yourself. And just because you're not good with people now doesn't mean you're good with people forever. Like we said, there's resources out there to get very good at all these different things, as long as you're willing to put the time and the effort in over a sustained period of time and be consistent and disciplined. So yeah, I think it's a good point, mate. Be careful what you're saying you are, because you can definitely change these things and it can have a big impact. What's on the agenda moving forward then? Any plans for the remainder of this year and next? Is it all hands on deck for the next 5 weeks till Christmas? Bit of a break for Thanksgiving, maybe? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a number of groups within the organization that I'm working with closely to help them on their security journey, and it's loads of fun. And I'm just looking forward to that, and then seeing what the future holds.
Yeah, cool. All right, John. Is there just one more question? When you're dealing with students and learners, is there any people that progress quicker than others? Is there anything that you see where people are falling down, where they could optimize their learning more, or anything they could do better, whether it's with the groups you're helping out or whether it's in a university setting?
People who actually put the effort into doing more. If the syllabus says you need to do A, B, and C, doing that and doing it well, and then taking that next step of saying, why does this need to be? And if doing the report is one thing, understanding why it's relevant and making those connections is another. Asking questions. If there's anything that you don't understand about the topic, or things that you want to learn about the career growth option, ask your faculty those questions, because they will help you a lot. I have a handful of students that I've collected over since 2008 who stay in touch and will still reach out and ask questions, or will ask for references or things like that. Those people put a smile on my face, because I can see that they're putting the effort in and they're wanting to succeed, and they're looking for people to invest in them.
Yeah, I'm really glad I asked you that question, because it reinforces stuff in my own mind as well, and it helps the listeners, but it helps me as well. So thanks, mate. And that actually takes me back to this. There's a recruitment founder that I was listening to who's done really well in recruitment, and they asked him that question, like, what makes people better and what makes you better and stuff like that. And I was expecting some really like fancy answer about the accounting or some acquisition, and it was all about standards. Like you said, just keeping the standards high, doing a bit more. If the syllabus says do this, do twice as much, and don't just go above and beyond. And the compound effect of that, I think is huge. But yeah, thanks for your time. Is the dishwasher man arrived? I didn't hear him. Has he got here yet? No.
Even received a message, so we'll see. Obviously, he's not communicating the way he promised he would.
Exactly.
I don't know if leadership understands.
Yeah, listen, we'll have to get him to listen to this episode, mate, and get him to start articulating himself a bit better, eh?
Absolutely.
No, but thanks, John. Do you think we've about covered everything? Do you think we've nailed it?
Good. Thank you very much for the time. It's been great chatting with you.
No, it's been good. Nice to see you. Thanks for your time. And yeah, I enjoyed that.